The Job Guys. What the world isn't watching.
What's happening, everybody? The Job Guys back with you one more time. Nitro, Nick sitting right over there. Ryan sitting right over here. And we come to you, Nick, on the 40th anniversary of what may have changed the game. What started the golden era. What started the wrestling boom of the 1980s. January 23rd, 1984. The day Hulkamania, as it says on your hat there, established 1984. At least in the WWE, it was established. This day, 40 years ago, Madison Square Garden, Hulk Hogan pins the Iron Sheik in 5 minutes, wins the then WWF title in Madison Square Garden in front of a sold-out crowd. To us, this is the main reason we got into wrestling. And nowadays, it is taboo to talk about this man because of some of the things that have happened, both in wrestling and definitely outside of wrestling.
You suck, pal!
But 40 years ago, and for about 30 of the last 40 years, this is what did it. This is what made wrestling what it was today. This was the start of it, Nick.
And again, we're talking about Hulkamania, not Terry Bollea on this show, Ryan. It was something we'd never seen before, Ryan. I mean, you're coming off, and no disrespect to Bob Backlund or Bruno Sammartino. I certainly wouldn't say that with my father watching either. Bruno Sammartino was his dude. But this was our dude, right? You know, I mean, we had been waiting, but wrestling was there. Maybe people were watching it, but this was the rocket pack that people talk about that is going to take wrestling to its next level. It was so incredible. And it took the world by storm. I mean, you're talking about a guy that became pop culture, Ryan. I mean, he's not only big here in America, he's big worldwide. You know, to me, there is nothing more important in wrestling than this moment, Ryan. Because without this moment, and we'll talk a little bit about it, there are so many other moments. The pinnacle of wrestling involves him, the highest moment in wrestling. And not only that, wrestling is dead until he makes a change and does something that will completely jumpstart the entire industry and kind of almost springboard it into what we see today as the wrestling industry. 1984, as far as wrestlers go, I don't think there's a bigger moment in time.
When it's crazy the way it happened, because he comes in like the first of the year, 1984. He comes in and immediately 3 weeks later, he is the world champion. And over the next hour or so, we will talk about everything. Just go over that match, how he came in to begin with, came into WWF, and why, and all of that. And then what just happened, how it became so big, what did exactly become big. We're going to go through all of it. And you're talking to a couple of guys here who were children when this happened.
Oh, yeah.
I got into wrestling because of him. That's the reason I started watching.
You weren't watching Bob Backlund?
Yeah, no, you know, and yeah, so a couple of guys here who got into it because of Hulk Hogan, because of what happened during this time. It's interesting. Obviously, Vince knew what he had planned. On Victory Corner on New Year's Eve, 1983, Vince McMahon is on this for whatever reason, and he gives some very cryptic answer when asked what is in store for 1984. And he gives this very cryptic answer, which people at home probably had no clue what he was talking about, but the promoters, other places, I'm sure, did at this point.
It would point toward a direction of a lot of turbulence, a lot of unusual things happening in professional wrestling, and it would probably open the gates for a virtual flood of wrestling talent into the World Wrestling Federation, the likes of which we've never seen before.
He was basically telling all the promoters, yeah, I'm taking you over. I'm going nationwide.
I bought your dudes.
Yep. And obviously, then on the TV taping there on, I believe it was January 2nd, January 3rd, when we see Hulk show up. And we see him with Bob Backlund come down to save Bob Backlund there on January 3rd. And then I believe that wasn't aired for about a week or two after that. And then, boom, the 23rd, he is your world champion fighting as a replacement for Bob Backlund in that match against the Iron Sheik when he takes over. Nick, before we get into everything as we normally do, just give me a quick summary. When you think about this match and when you think about what do you think about?
The last time you had seen Hulk, he's a bad guy, right? He had left the WWE as a major heel, a big feeder of Andre, you know.
Yep.
So this guy storms back in after kind of birthing this in AWA. And I just thought when I first saw him, he was larger than life. I mean, this guy isn't 180 pounds, 5'10". You know, he's huge. What is he? 6'6", 303 or something like that, right?
Yeah, and billed at 6'8".
6'8", okay.
Bigger than everybody except Andre, pretty much.
Right. This guy is huge. And for me, it was, and people can take shots at this all the time. WWE was the Cartoon Network compared to the, okay, but it was what I wanted to see. This was for kids, man. And the way he talked, the way his charisma was, the way it was so believable to me that this guy, he really cared about me taking my vitamins, saying my prayers, working out. You know, we didn't have the internet to know the outside of the ring aspects of these guys, who they were. I thought he was Hulk Hogan all the time, you know, and it, to me, it was just the match itself. I just was excited when because I started watching literally like right after he wins the belt. I get in because the Rock and Wrestling is coming soon. And you know,
that summer,
the cartoons, you know, like I was talking, and the action figures. What were they from? I forget the big rubbery ones. Who were made those? I forget. I'm sorry.
LJN.
Those are my favorite ones. I had a ton of those, man. And I started collecting, and just they brought in all these other guys who are really cool too. But to me, it was just better. I don't know that me and you would be sitting here doing this with a Bob Backlund or a Bruno Sammartino. I just, that was my dad's generation, you know, where they more real, more shoot wrestling. And again, people like the matches we weren't there, right? Nobody was asking for a 45-minute Hulk Hogan match. You know, we just wanted to see him get in there and do some power moves, which he could, cut a sweet promo, which he could. And man, when he took this belt from the Sheik, it was on, and I fell in love with this guy, and I was a Hulkamaniac. I was right behind him from day one. And to believe it or not, I did not think anybody can beat him. And I did believe Gorilla when he said he was the greatest athlete in the world and the toughest dude in the world. I was full in, right?
Yeah. Well, and this was the birth of the cartoon era when he went national, when he started coming around to other territories that they had never gone to before. They, you know, our buddy Richard Land, shout out to the history of WWFE.com with their lists of all the house shows and all the TV shows and everything they have. A lot of them you see debut at the venue. You know, they had not been to LA. They had not been to San Diego. They had not been to Cincinnati. They had not been to a lot of these places. They start going there because of this. But this is, like you said, the start of the cartoon era, which we will get into. But the action figures, the lunch boxes, the toys, the cartoon, everything, the merchandise, which is a huge reason why he was in New York to begin with, before Hulk came in.
AWA.
You know, you had Hogan and Bockwinkel back in the day. And Hulk was going for that title. Coming off Rocky II, the guy blows up. Coming off of Rocky II, which came out, I believe, Memorial Day. Excuse me, Rocky III. I'm coming out Memorial Day 1982. There's the two that I was speaking of. And then about 9 months later, Hogan is huge. He is now a babyface because of that movie. He is now a babyface. He takes off like a skyrocket. Twice in like a week, Hogan got Dusty finished to beat Nick Bockwinkel.
Yes.
He pinned the guy, and then some technicality happened, and they take the belt. They have a Super Sunday event. And everybody thought, okay, this is it. They screwed him the first time. Now he's going to win.
Wrong.
Hogan accidentally throws him over the top rope when the referee was down. He then pins Nick Bockwinkel, wins the belt. Oh, wait, dusty finish. You threw him over the top rope. They had all stops pulled out here. According to Hogan and others, they doubled ticket prices. Place was sold out. They thought they were going to see a title change. You had all the authority figures in the ring before the match. Stanley Blackburn, Wally Carbo, these dudes were all in the ring. You thought it was going to change, and then you dusty finished him. And I guess, according to Hogan and others, Hogan was doing massive business in Japan at this time. Also, he was going over there all the time. He went back to Japan right after winning the WWF title as well and was over there for weeks. Anyway, well, Vern's like, you're under contract with me. That means I should get part of your merchandise. That means I should get part of your money. You have to pay me. And Hogan's like, heck, no, that's not the way it works around it. No.
Doesn't work for me, brother.
Doesn't work for me, brother. So they start fighting, they whatever. And here comes Vince. Vince makes him an offer he can't refuse, apparently, and I'm going to make you my champ. I'm taking over the world, and you're going to be the guy.
Right? Complete opposite from Daddy Vince.
Right.
Who was like, you're a wrestler, don't do Rocky,
right.
Don't do movies, get out of here. Vince was like, freaking get him on the big screen. That's going to make me more money.
Right. And I want this guy to be my guy. Hulkamania was already in full force. If you watch an interview from back then, he's doing a lot of the same things.
You know what they're scared of, Mean Gene? They're scared that Hulkamania is still running wild. I came into Denver town with both of these 24-inch pythons loaded.
Come any heavier than Andre the Giant.
It's not Hulkamania anymore. That's a Giant Mania.
All right, Giant Mania, yes, sir.
The two biggest one, right?
When he comes down to the ring on that Super Sunday show, there is Hulkamania signs everywhere. The old printer paper that used to be all connected, you had to rip out. You stretch it all out. People are writing Hulkamania on it. They're everywhere, man. He's coming out to the song, Eye of the Tiger. Now, I know other people have used entrance music before. You think of the Road Warriors. You think of even Sergeant Slaughter, I believe, came out to the Marine hymn. And other guys, the Freebirds, and going way back. I think Gorgeous George even came out to the Macho Man song, Pomp and Circumstance, but not like this. I mean, Eye of the Tiger was the #1 song for like 2 months straight when this movie came out. I mean, this was a massive, massive hit. And this guy has ownership of that song too. So it fit, it wasn't just some random song. Like, this was his freaking song. The place just erupted when this guy came out. Vince saw that and went, wait a minute. You're not going to put the belt on this guy because he's not a real pro wrestler? Because that's what Vern was about. He was about amateur backgrounds and Brand Reagans and all these guys.
He's an idiot.
He's like, forget that. This is a show. Yeah. And this guy, nobody puts on a better show than Hulk Hogan. I'm going and taking him. And boom, again, 3 weeks is all it took to get this guy over. And they already knew who he was. Look at that reaction. When he comes down with Bob Backlund, the place goes ape.
Nuts.
And his first appearance, and he was on a Wrestling at the Chase show, which wasn't advertised yet at that point, but in St. Louis, and nobody saw that but people in St. Louis. So, I mean, they knew and they were ready. And what a dropped ball by the AWA.
You stutter step, you fumbled, you drop the ball. Don't make the mistake of dropping the ball again.
Vince certainly knows. I don't know that he's great on creating stars, but he's certainly great on taking something that is bubbling, boiling, almost to the top, turning up the volume and making them bigger than they were. You got to give him credit on that, all
those guys that they brought over. I mean, your JYDs, your Pipers.
He's huge.
Piper, look what they did with Piper. They brought him in. He was banged up here at the beginning because he got his eardrum whacked in that dog collar match with Valentine. So he was a manager for a little bit. Okay, let's put him with Dr. D and Mr. Wonderful. Oh, and this guy can talk really well. Well, let's give him his own segment so he can talk every week.
Yep.
I mean, come on. That's genius. He didn't create the Piper character, but he went, this guy is a character, and I'm going to give him time to be the character.
And nobody talks about that.
Off.
Hulk Hogan is apparently the only cartoon character of the 80s. Nobody talks that Piper's Pit is moving toward a show, not wrestling. The Junkyard Dog is coming out and shaking it in the ring with everybody. I mean, I love JYD, but I'm not going to go down on record saying he's one of the best in-ring technicians I've ever seen.
Only Hogan can't wrestle.
I know, only Hogan. But, these other, and we talk about it, these other guys are coming in too. They're flooding in. And that's what he was talking about changing the territory. And now Hogan's got all these new guys who are pumped up thanks to Vince. The volume turned up. And we are on the way to some of the greatest feuds. And gosh dang it, it's the exact opposite of almost today. We didn't want to see the chase. We wanted to see the defense slope. Yeah. Like, I didn't want to see, like, people are talking, I didn't want to see Hogan lose. He is the dude. Put the jetpack on him and let's go. And
that was the difference, even in Vince Senior days, between the NWA and the Northeast WWF territory. They had their belt for 5 years, I think 8 years or 7 years on Bob Backlund. Then he won it again for a couple of years. The good guy had the belt. Same thing with Bob Backlund. The good guy had the belt, and then the bad guys were trying to catch them. We're in the NWA. It was always the bad guy with the belt. He toured all around the nation, and he came to your territory, and your good guy had to try to take the belt from him. And then there'd be a technicality or something, and then they come back next month and sell tickets again and again and again. It was the complete opposite theory. And then here comes Hulk Hogan,
Stan Hansen, the Iron Sheik, these guys are transitional champs in the WWE. They're not holding the belt, and they do it just the exact opposite in NW, like Rugged Ronnie Garvin, or somebody like that. The face is going to be the transitional champion, right?
Yeah, absolutely. The face is always the transitional champion. Harley Race had the belt 7 times. Flair had it forever,
Yeah.
And then maybe back in the 70s, it was slightly different. You
I
had
think
guys
they threw
like
it to the
Briscoe.
Von Erichs for a minute.
For just 1 second. Yeah.
Like a second, again, like a Sheik run.
That was, I think, probably more because Kerry was doing things he shouldn't have been doing. But they also put it on him because the other guy died in Japan. So they had the parade of champions for him. But yes, it was a total different way to do business. And you can't say that what they did is wrong, because look at the success rate. Here we are 40 years later, still talking about what it meant to the world. You're sitting here wearing a hat that you bought that within the last 10 years, right?
Within the last 3 years. Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah. I have multiple. I have 3 Hulkamania shirts. I have 3 Hollywood shirts. I've got figures of Hogan on both sides. And I've kept these things. He got me to spend money. He got me to go out and do things. I don't know that Coliseum Video works without Hulk Hogan. You get these. I don't know if people remember Hulkamania 1, Hulkamania 2, which was one of the greatest. There's 2 or 3 that's one of the greatest.
3, yeah.
3 is freaking awesome.
We're sitting on the boat, yeah.
Oh yeah, talking about the Andre feud. These are. Everything spurs from 84, from this, right? And you start moving and you put this on him, and everybody else, apparently it's okay for other people to use the rub word, just not Hogan. How many people rubbed off this dude? And I'm not talking heels, I'm talking faces too. We had this conversation before I even got on. Hillbilly Jim, you're telling me right now,
Put him out there with Hogan, he'll be over.
Then he did. Without Hogan, he's a dude in suspenders, overalls. It doesn't work for me, brother. But he's
go down the list. How many guys through, let's just say, the first run did they just stick with Hogan to get him over? I think the only guy it didn't work with was Honky Tonk. That's because that guy's a heel to begin with.
He's a heel. Yeah.
But yeah. We need to get him over. Stick him with Hogan. Tugboat.
By the sea, by the sea, by the beautiful sea. That's where I'll be.
Bam Bam Bigelow they did that with.
How do we do Uncle Elmer's wedding, Ryan?
Yeah, Hogan.
Hogan's got to come out. Otherwise, it's just Uncle Elmer's wedding. Everything they did circulated around this guy. And they got it to a point, Ryan, where I honestly didn't think he was beatable.
Right.
I talk to you all the time. He wins in 84. I don't think he's beatable until early 87 when something happens. The Battle Royal. You know what? It's Hogan. But wait, the way they built that match and the way Andre did in that Battle Royal, when you build up a guy like that just the throw out of the ring shocked the living hell out of me, Ryan. And they did that, and I'll bring this back. This is for all the people. Well, Bundy should have got a title run, Ryan. What? If Bundy beats Hogan, Piper beats Hogan, Orndorff beats Hogan, do we have WrestleMania 3? Is that match, who cares?
Right.
He's already lost, and he was on this upward trajectory at this point in time. I don't know how you give somebody else a title win over this guy at that point. And by God, that WrestleMania 3 to me is still a pay-per-view that I can put in over and over again, Ryan.
Well, and that's a whole other argument, too, because you hear that all the time. Oh, Hogan wouldn't do business. Hogan wouldn't do business. Well, first of all, Piper is the one on record saying he never would lose on television. That's a whole nother argument. But yeah, you're right. Now, if Hogan wouldn't do business, he was so bad for WWE. Okay, now do Bob Backlund because he had the belt for 5 years. Oh, now do Bruno because he twice had it for 5 years.
Red car. Good point.
So, do those guys too.
He
you don't want to do that?
Than I was alive at that point.
Yeah. You don't want to do that? Okay.
Oh.
And let's move forward.
Sure.
You're exactly right. If somebody else beats him, then it's not a big deal when 13 rating, 33 million people watched Hulk and Andre. Then nobody cares about that. If somebody else beats him before that, then this doesn't matter anymore. When the Ultimate Warrior finally pins him clean, you wouldn't still be talking about it today. It's only a big deal because nobody had done it in 6 years.
We talk about the genius on the count out.
Look at right now. Look at Roman Reigns. I still have people telling me, well, he should have lost to Drew at Clash at the Castle. For what? Would you have cared as much about that Cody match? 1 year later, people are still bent out of shape that Cody lost. If Drew would have beat him 9 months before that, wouldn't have mattered. If Drew would have beat him, the peak that you're on apparently right now, it would have been over a year and a half ago. You don't have him lose just some random match. And why are we having this conversation and not a Ric Flair Starrcade 83 conversation? Because Ric Flair lost all the time. So it's not as special. Every single one of these, by him not losing, created moments. It created Saturday Night's Main Event. You just mentioned it. Here's one nobody talks about. You're talking about that Battle Royal in Detroit 3 weeks before WrestleMania, a week or whatever it was, before WrestleMania 3, when Andre threw Hogan over the top rope like it was nothing. McMahon. People don't remember this. That is the highest rated Saturday Night's Main Event of all time. Remember, the other one's the main event. That was on primetime television back then. This is Saturday Night's Main Event, which was on at 11:30 at night on a Saturday. Got over an 11 rating, the highest one ever. And why is that?
They have wrestling on Saturday now. Does it get over an 11?
11,000?
No, yeah, Ryan, because it's him. Because it put the weight, when you build a character up like Hogan like this, what they did to me, Ryan, on that one, and on any of these ones, when he does get beat, you sit there like, what? I mean, I still remember going in the $1 Million Man, another guy who I guess Hogan did nothing for, it comes in and tries to buy the belt. That night when they went off the air, we got cut. The Bulldogs and Strike Force are in that ring fighting for the tag golds. It's on the network if you ever want to see it. It's a really quick match. It got cut. They ran out of time.
Yeah.
I didn't freaking care. Like, I'm still sitting there going, wait a minute. There were 2 refs. How can this stand? Like,
Look at the $100 bills falling out.
Look, how much was it, brother, for the plastic surgery? Like,
what made it special, once again, in 1996, because it's the first time it happened. He finally turned heel.
Yeah.
If he did a Ric Flair and turned every other week or every year, wouldn't have been as special. What was special was because he was trained, prayers, vitamins, believe in yourself, never lost, beep, bop, boop. I did it all for the money. That's why it was special, because of what he did with the time right now that we're talking about.
And the announcers, how much money did Heenan make off of Hogan? I mean, what my favorite
made a living off of Hogan.
My favorite
AWA. He was fighting Hogan.
My favorite saying, dude, one of them is, my kids will come up to me, Mr. Horseman, have you heard this new song? Yeah, I did. It's my second favorite song. They're like, oh my God, you like it? What's your first favorite? Every other song ever recorded. Yeah, all the rest of them, brother. It's Hulk Hogan. Where he goes, wrestling follows, man. I just think he's always delivered. He's always gave us what we wanted. And he is wrestling to me. I mean, without him, Ryan, I don't know where we'd be today. I don't know what we'd be watching. That's
a good question, because you don't know what else there would have been. Maybe Vince does it with somebody else, or maybe it just doesn't turn into that. It's tough to say, but yeah, it became what it became. Obviously, there was other dudes too, but Hulk Hogan is the one that got you in the door. He was the one that got the initial eyeballs. Then, much like a Stone Cold, let's say, 15 years after that, I'm watching because of him. But then once you're there, you go, this Rock guy's pretty good. You know what? I kind of like this Mick Foley guy. That was the same thing here.
Yes.
It was the exact same thing here. People, you know what? That Junkyard Dog guy is kind of cool. I like the way he dances and everything.
That Jake of the Snake is kind of interesting.
Go down the list. Yeah, there was a lot of them. All right, so there's not too much to say about this match other than transitional champion. Hogan comes in, roof blows off the place immediately. He wins, kicks out of the finisher there. That had not been done for it, I think, ever, to the Iron Sheik. He wins the belt.
Yeah, I don't know, but
everybody's excited. And this was on the MSG network. And it isn't like the main event. They go throughout the night, the celebration in the back. So they humanize Hogan a little bit because his parents are there. So they humanize him right there. And then who comes to celebrate with him other than Andre the Giant?
Oh, I'm here to help you, Jorge.
They put him over. I'm proud of you. Puts him over immediately. The biggest guy in the company, literally and figuratively, puts him over right away.
Probably the biggest guy in wrestling.
Oh, yeah. The guy literally was a movie star. Everybody knew Andre the Giant. He puts Hogan over. Then the tag champs come in. Tony Atlas and The Rock's dad come in there, and everybody puts this guy over. So if there was anybody out there that didn't know who this was and that he was a good guy now and everything, he's immediately put over by all the biggest guys in the company. And then, as everybody knows and what we've talked about, man, it just blasts off, man, like a rocket ship. Vince gets in bed with MTV. Captain Lou and Cyndi Lauper somehow hook up. She's a big wrestling fan. That summer, the Rock and Wrestling connection starts. They get on MTV. So now they're with all the hip young kids. They're going more cartoon, fun-based, whatever. Now they're getting that audience. Cyndi Lauper's in there and for the brawl that ended all. And then later, the war that settles the score. And then, boom, WrestleMania. And there have been other super cards, which we know there have been other super cards, but this then gets Hollywood involved. So it's not just rock and wrestling. I mean, you've got Liberace and Muhammad Ali, who had done wrestling before, but Bob Costas and Billy Martin, and go down the list of all the people that are there.
It's a happening.
It's a happening. Just massive, man. Then he gets on Sports Illustrated, #1 magazine all year long in 1985.
Yep.
Their highest selling magazine.
Has a wrestler ever
Hogan.
Has another wrestler ever been on Sports Illustrated?
Since then, that's a good question. I'm not sure if anybody has since, but obviously he was the first there, and it was the biggest magazine they had in 1985. And then how about this, Nick? We talking about the kids and everything. We know the toys came into effect September 14th, 1985. Hulk Hogan's Rock and Wrestling premieres on CBS. Not on Nickelodeon, not on Adult Swim, not on the Cartoon Network, on CBS. For every kid on earth to see every morning. And before that, Saturday night's main event.
None of these happen without him. And I think that's kind of his gift too, Ryan, that I don't know that every other wrestler could have done late night talk shows, morning kid shows, MTV, movie. He fit in everywhere. Like he just worked. Whether it was, like I said, he's on the late night show with Carson or whatever. I don't know who's on there, or Leno or whoever he did back. No, it wasn't Leno, but
he was on Johnny Carson. Yes, but in 1982.
And that's a different fan base than you're going to see on MTV. But it worked both ways. And then it's an even more different fan base than you're going to get on Saturday morning. I mean, he is appealing to multiple generations of people, and they love him, and they just kept going with that. And feud after feud kept bringing in money. You went onward from that WrestleMania. We're going to go into, and I think you had said Paul Orndorff and Hogan drew pretty well, didn't it, Ryan?
To that point, it was the #1 drawing house show run of all time. In 1986. That was through the roof. Before you get to WrestleMania 3, the big event's got almost 70,000 people, if not 70, whatever the number is, up there in Toronto for that show, and they sold out every single where they went. But we talked about TV too, and I don't think people nowadays, obviously TV isn't as big. There's a million channels. We have streaming and all that. I don't think people understand how big it was to have wrestling back on network television, because it hadn't been since the 50s. It'd be obviously on cable and on syndication and everything. It'd never been on network television since the 50s. Dick Ebersol saw something, and he saw Hulk Hogan is what he saw. And he gave them, whatever it was, once every other month, once every 3 months, Saturday Night Live's time slot. Saturday Night Live in the 84-85 season was averaging a 7.5 rating. And then in 85-86, it averaged a 7.1 rating. The very first Saturday night's main event came in with an 8.8 rating. Over a whole point more, if not a point and a half more.
That's incredible.
Yeah. And then 2 years later, as we told you, right before WrestleMania 3, over an 11 rating. December 85 draws a 7.4 rating. That was Hulk Hogan beating Terry Funk. 10.4 rating in December of 85. 10.0 for the next one. So, I mean, this is crushing Saturday Night Live's ratings. And it's because of this guy.
Yeah. Yep.
It's because of this guy, man. So
they weren't tuning in to see George Steele.
No. And then, as you've seen, we talked about this before, but the WrestleMania 3, obviously, whatever you think the number is, we're from Detroit. We know that they fit 80,000 into the Silverdome for football. That's nobody on the field. Now you add all the people that are on the field, and obviously then they bump the number up and they count everybody in the building. Whatever. You go look at some of the other things. Go look at Wrestle Rock. Go look at some of the other huge events. Go look at the one we talked about, Flair against Von Erich down there where the Cowboys played at Texas Stadium. 40,000 is nothing to shake a stick at. That's a heck of a number. But the place is half full. Toronto, full. Detroit, full. I mean, these places are full, man. Now we again, I don't think people understand because now WrestleMania fills that many every year. They didn't back then. This guy did it. Incredible. Who else are we talking about? Where's the 40th anniversary of Flair? Where's the 40th anniversary of Backlund? Where's the 40th anniversry of Antonio Inoki? I mean, go down there isn't one. There's a reason why there's one for this guy. That was the next thing I was going to ask. What do you think it was? Take yourself back, the little Hortzer back in 1984, 85, 86. What was it about this guy that got everybody's attention? Because you said there were the haters too. And they're going way back. There were the Melchers of the world that just never liked the guy. And other people, the NWA fans did not like it either. They thought they were making a mockery of the sport by making it more cartoon, more fan-friendly, family-friendly. Why did this guy blow up the way he blew up? What was it to you?
To me, if I had to pick one thing, it's his charisma. It's just the way he is, the way he cuts the promo, the way, okay, you don't like his matches. Stop watching the moves. Watch the way he interacts with the audience. Watch the way he looks around. Watch the way he plays off the people. And to be honest, fast forward ahead of time, if you don't like watching that, go watch him versus The Rock. Watch how he knows what to do. That to me is the biggest thing. Because we had seen other big dudes. Like, he's not the first 6 foot plus guy in the industry. It's just, he's not. And he's not the greatest worker, but it's his charisma. It's almost Ronald Reagan-esque as he's coming through the TV to you. He's nicknamed the Great Communicator. Hulk Hogan, like, when he's sitting on that TV cutting that promo, he's telling little Horts to take his vitamins, take his, train, do your things. And he was to me like part of my family, almost became like a second dad almost, because I had that such good viewpoint. Remember, we didn't have the internet. We didn't have, I don't know who Terry Bollea is. I had no idea. And if you just said Terry Bollea any point through the 80s, who the hell's that?
If you do that, if you're going to, obviously nobody's discounting what he has done in the past however many years, but yeah, you could probably do whatever for a lot of wrestlers or all of them back in the day, and you wouldn't be proud of what you found. The guy's 6'8", 300 pounds, right? Like, people act like, well, he can't do, to rip off your line, an Acai Muso. What other 6'8" guys doing an Acai Muso? Like, they act like this guy is 6 feet tall or 5'10" or Kenny Omega or something. He's 6'8", 300.
Yeah.
Nobody was doing that stuff. He's not any worse than any of the other big guys who you.
And I was just going to say that, Ryan, they act like every other match on the card was Steamboat Savage.
Yeah.
It was only the Hogan matches that were wrestled that way.
Those are the only ones that were bad.
Really?
Were the
People
Hogan
were
matches.
like, I need more Corporal Kirshner. He's freaking lighting it up. Everybody wrestled that way. That was the industry. You see that too
in WWE, but yes.
In WWE, yes. That was the industry in WWE. You see that today too with people like Michael Jordan. All he did was drive the lane and dunk the basketball.
Played a bunch of plumbers.
Yeah, what would he do today? I don't know. Maybe if he was born in 2000, he'd probably play a different game than today.
We also, again, didn't have the internet, so you didn't see his matches from over in Japan, which were way better than the ones over here. He is doing a lot more wrestling holds, drop toe holds, leapfrogs. He's doing all sorts of stuff.
And that's not just Ryan Slocum's words. That I've heard from multiple other wrestlers
just
from that era. Yeah, they other wrestlers have said that from that era, that this dude can wrestle.
Yeah.
We saw him over there in Japan. He's doing what we want to see and hear. Remember, Ryan, you go back, and we watch these WrestleMania. I'm sorry, when I was 7, 8, 9, 10 years old, I did not want to watch 40-minute matches.
Not everybody was going to go do Savage Steamboat. If everybody did Savage Steamboat, you wouldn't remember Savage Steamboat. It'd be just another good match on the card. Yeah, 40 years, man. That's hard to believe that it's been that long.
Yes. Wow.
And everything has changed, as we all know. And some people probably are not clicking on this just due to the fact that, oh, you're praising a guy who's not a good guy. And if that's the way you feel, that's perfectly, perfectly, I understand.
You better not watch the NFL.
How unfortunate is it that this, and I'm not taking anything away from what has happened, but how unfortunate is it? Because this should be a show that literally everybody on earth is doing this week, today. Everybody should be doing this. This is the Babe Ruth of wrestling, and it's tumbled. And I think it started to tumble even before, maybe because of some of the stuff we just talked about, before the phone calls got out there, before the tape got out there, before all of that. He was already sliding in the minds of a lot of wrestling fans. How unfortunate is that? Because it's a guy who probably should be everybody's number one guy. And why do you think even before, we know why he slid because of the phone calls, right?
Sure.
That's pretty
sure.
I think
that's
we
not
got
a good
that.
thing. Yeah, you got
How
it.
about the everything else? So why do you think he slipped? Why do you think he isn't remembered?
I think you just need to look at the rest of sports in general, or wrestling in general. I have the same way I feel about Bruno Sammartino. I don't want to see that. Like people tell me he's the greatest of all time. Yep. Look at that. Who was that pitcher that I could strike out Babe Ruth? Well, I freaking hope so. He played in the freaking 20s. It's because I think it'll happen to 50 years now. Kids are going to look back at Rome. This guy freaking sucked, dude. I mean, and you got the hate that you had the original hate because some people didn't like the way he wrestled, but you're getting a new breed of wrestler. I mean, people that started watching in the 90s grew up with a Bret Hart, Shawn Michaels, or maybe you're on the other channel. You're still seeing Ric Flair. You're seeing more wrestlers, and they're looking back the same way we just talked about Michael Jordan and what was and that basketball's crap from the 80s and 90s, right? Joe Montana. If you look on there, I think guys like Joe Flacco have more passing yards than Joe Montana.
It's a different league. Yeah.
You're going to look at me and tell me he's better than Joe Montana? I'm not going to agree with you. It's a different league. And I think people are just drawn to their generation. And when you go back and watch some of that old, same as me and you turn on some 50s, 60s, 70s wrestling, I'm like,
And some people don't want to watch black and white movies.
Right. Yeah. That's what I think really starts it. And then you've got other podcasters who really just don't like Hulk Hogan for whatever reason, his wrestling style, the cartoon of the show, or the lies of he was the only guy, didn't put people over. He was the only guy who hired his friends. And you keep exacerbating these lies. And I'm not saying.
Why do you think that is? That was going to be my next question. Why do you think he gets so much crap for that? And again, he has exaggerated some things and whatever, but I think that's just the way the world was back then. Why is it just him? Because if you listen to a Piper interview, he does the same stuff. Flair's still doing that. All those old 80s and 70s guys are constantly saying things that aren't true. Why do you think it's Hogan that gets so much junk? And it wasn't just since the phone calls.
Right.
It was happening before that, too.
Because he's the best, right? That's it. Because he's the best. Tom Brady. Well, his divisions were weak. They were. Tom Brady, he had the best teams around. There's always an excuse. Michael Jordan had Scottie Pippen. It's because, I'm sorry, if you're not a fan of the best, this happens in everything, you tend to not like him.
It's hard to believe, man. 40 years. The dude, we grew up watching from all of it. The only reason we've sold it a million times, the only reason you and I even talk to this day is because of Hulk Hogan.
Hulk Hogan. Right.
It's the only reason why.
He probably not only has that, he's got the biggest cage match, in my opinion. I mean, We all remember where the boss man, the suplex off the top rope, Ryan. I mean, how sweet was that? Ryan, what's the biggest
After
main
getting
event?
dealt on by Zeus?
Oh, yeah, Zeus, yeah. What's the biggest main event in Raw history?
May have been the one we were at in Detroit right before WrestleMania 18.
The original 3 NWO members versus
Hogan?
Austin and The Rock.
Excuse me. Oh, yeah. Austin and The Rock. 5 of the biggest names. 3 of who did. Oh, and who did they bring out at WrestleMania 30? You know, I think the business is where it is today. I think it is obviously where it was in 1984 because of this night right here, pinning the Iron Sheik, taking over. All of it. WrestleMania does not happen, at least not at the level it did without him. Who was in the main event of the first 9 of them? You know?
Some of the biggest moments verbally. Who's the third man? Hulk Hogan's here. Hulk Hogan is in the building. You know, he beat Andre with that move. You know, like, I mean, these are the what is it? The irresistible force,
the immovable object,
and the movable. Who else has these, man?
Yeah.
Who else? The mega powers explode. You know, like,
well, just even stare downs. I mean, the Hogan Andre stare down, the Hogan Rock stare down, which now everybody tries to do.
Yep.
Those two stood there and they looked this way, then they looked this way. Everybody does that now for the last 20 years. Why? Because it worked for them. Well, it worked because it was Hulk Hogan and it was The Rock. That's why it worked.
And these people out there, these ideas that at certain points, like Orndorff should have beat him, Perfect should have beat him. Like, you were out of your freaking mind. Like, none of it
because it would have taken away other moments.
Everything.
Like we said.
Yeah.
If Orndorff beats him earlier that summer, what does that do for Hogan Andre?
Even if they slip the belt right back on
WrestleMania 3. They've tried that later in life, by the way, and look how that worked out. How'd that work when Luger beat him on a random Monday and then lost it back the next Saturday?
Oh, people are
look
still
at what it
upset
did with
about that.
Goldberg. No build whatsoever. And what happened to Goldberg after that? It slipped.
Wait a minute, Ryan. He lost to Goldberg and Luger.
Hogan he never put anybody over.
What about Yokozuna?
No.
The Warrior?
No.
Goldberg?
No.
Sting?
The
Rock?
So. Never once.
None of those guys. There was one guy, he used to do these F5s. I think he had a big match versus Hogan, too. Who won that match?
He might have won that one. A rookie, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it was a rookie.
How about a guy named Billy Kidman?
Never heard of her.
Heard of her? I think he beat Hogan 3 freaking times.
Couple times.
How
about Vampiro?
Did he beat Hogan?
Oh, he beat him. I was there. So were you.
I must have went for a drink or something. I'm not watching that crap. Vampire. This is what I think we all need to be careful on Hogan. And you can dislike Hogan. If you don't, I always said this. If you don't
there you
like
go.
that,
you don't remember that stuff. When it starts happening all the time, you don't remember.
And if you don't like that era, you don't like the Junkyard Dog, you don't like Andre, you don't like, I get that, man. But if you're just sitting there and you don't like Hogan, I'm going to guess you weren't there.
Yeah.
You know, that's my guess. Or maybe you're a Piper fan, which I get too, you know,
sure.
Or a Macho fan or something like that. But, you know, these people weighing in on these podcasts and these other shows, like, you know, I was born in 95. Let me tell you about 1987.
Usually it's 2005 with some of these. Yeah.
You know, it'd be like me and you weighing in on Buddy Rogers. Yeah, he sucked, man.
I remember the first time I saw Willie Mays play. I was I was very excited. Yeah, that's fine. If you didn't like the style, if you're more of a wrestling match guy, all right, I can understand some of that. But you have to give credit where it's due for where he took the business.
Yep.
You have to give him credit for where he took the business. And I've heard things. Well, he only did that because Vince pushed him. Yeah, there's a reason why he pushed him and not all these other guys. There's a reason he pushed Hulk, because Hulk had the whole package. He had, you know, so you got to give credit there. If you don't like the guy now, completely understandable. But you have to
look at the other guys,
credit.
though,
It's
Ryan.
incredible. 40 years later, dude.
And we've talked about this. You're going to put the belt on Piper? Nobody sees a problem with that but me and you. If I'm the booker, I am not putting that belt on Piper. He doesn't
He's
lose.
on record saying he won't lose.
So how do I put the belt on him?
Right.
Orndorff doesn't like to lose. How do I put and Hogan's the only one. Did Hogan lose his smile? How many times did he lose his smile, Ryan?
I think 3 or 4.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure there's a guy named Goldberg who refused to work with people. You know, these, again, and I'm not picking on these guys. When you are on the top, everybody is coming at you. This is what people forget. And you need to do what you need to do to protect your top spot. And Hogan is apparently the only guy that ever did that. Everybody else, you can lose like Flair.
In a positive light.
Yeah.
We're wrapping up here last couple minutes, the last minute actually. Wrap him up. The Hulkster 40 years, man. We wrap him up if you can real quick.
He's the greatest thing that ever happened, and I think wrestling's worse without him. You look at where's the biggest booms, Ryan? 80s. Why? Hogan. Late 90s. Why? Hogan. And you even had a revive. It was your last chance when the NWO came over here. And we were all excited too. Hogan's back in the WWE. And as much as people ripped on him, did they give him the belt when he came back? They did. He is the biggest thing in wrestling history. I don't want to hear Vince McMahon made Hulk Hogan. He turned the volume up on Hulk Hogan, 100%. Hulk Hogan made Hulk Hogan, in my opinion. He got him over, and he bet on the right racehorse.
I wouldn't even say that. I'd say Vince rode the pony because the pony was already rolling. The Pony was the #1 movie of 1982. The Pony was doing it in Minneapolis, and he just bought the pony and then ran it around Churchill Downs until it died. Yep, no doubt.
The greatest.
And it all started right here, January 23rd, 1984, with the win over the Iron Sheik. #1. Nick, as always, appreciate it, buddy. Thank you all for watching. As always, if you're still watching, thoughts about this, please let us know. Please hit like. Please hit subscribe. Give us your thoughts, good, bad, or indifferent. What are your top Hulk Hogan moments? Maybe tell us those in the comments if you can. And as always, thanks for watching. We wouldn't be doing this if there weren't a few of you out there watching, so we appreciate it. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Nick.
Thank you.
Job, guys. Out.
Pleasure's all yours, lucky boys.